All right, so we were going to be talking about how you actually get started within the Power Platform. So when I first started out, I rolled onto the Power Platform and I didn't really know what it was. And I got accepted at my developer position through having a bit of Power BI experience, having SharePoint experience, working a little bit with InfoPath for the people that know, they know. But yeah, InfoPath is one of the predecessors of Power Apps, I think it is. And back then, I kind of rolled onto the Power Platform, and I got started there. And then I was like, oh well, I don't know what a Canvas app is. I don't know what a model-driven app is. How do I create a Power Automate flow? And I was just kind of thrown in the deep, like, hey, good luck. We have this internal client. They want to have this and that. Just start learning and start building. And I was like, okay, how? I mean, I didn't know what Power FX was. I didn't know low code, no code, all of the concepts. So where I actually got started is I did a app in a day training and a Power Automate in a day, or as it used to be called, RPA in a day. And those are really good in-depth 8-hour trainings where they walk you through how to create a Canvas app, how to do a model-driven app, how to do I think it now has business process flows in it and what's a business rule and all of that stuff. But even then, if you don't know what a Canvas app is, if you don't know what a model-driven app is, and you just go in blindly, and then you're like, okay, I'm doing this, but why am I actually doing this? How does all of this work? So what I actually recommend is, aside from those, because they, while they are awesome, they don't really explain what a Canvas app is. They just tell you how to build one. So I would say to go through the Microsoft Learn paths. So Microsoft Learn has a really good path on actually explaining what a Canvas app does, what the scope is, why you would want to build one. Same with a model-driven app. Same with business process flows. But also, I mean, there's videos out there. So the creator videos, for example, Lisa Crosby has awesome beginner videos on model-driven apps. Shane Young is amazing with Power FX and really explaining like why does something work the way that it works and how do you approach that. So that's kind of what I wish that I had, that somebody told me when I first started within the whole Power Platform, like, hey, these are the creators you can follow. These are some of the paths you can do. And then there's a whole lot more after that, but I don't want to go through all of my tips within the next 10 minutes or so. But maybe somebody else has some input on how they got started and how they would like to have seen a tip sheet when they first started out. Or do you guys want me to continue? Yeah, go for it, Mike.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that I also sort of fell into Power Platform accidentally, and I also what I would say is when I first started, I was not aware that there was a whole community around Power Platform as well, and how strong that community was. And I really don't know why I didn't really like fall into the community sooner, but I kind of worked as a bit of I guess, a lone wolf and tried to work everything out for myself. So I don't really, yeah, I mean, I don't really know the answer, but it's definitely like the community is definitely a strong way to like get more into it and get leveled up by others in the community to really increase your skill set.
Mhm. Oh yeah, no, I definitely agree. That was the next step that I wanted to talk about, is getting through to the community on like what are all of the calls? What's the website for it? I mean, I sent Sarah the one for aka.ms/community rocks, which is the landing page for the community. But I only found out what the community was like 6 months after I did Power Platform, and I found out by mistake because I went to the Power Platform conference in Orlando, and I stumbled upon a live session of the community call, and I didn't even know what it was, and I just went in there and I saw David Warner and Hugo Bernier and April Dunham, and I was just there like, hey, what is this? I kind of knew the power user website, and I kind of knew that people were responding there, but I didn't know there was a whole community behind it. I mean, if somebody would have told me, would have guided me towards it, that would have been really helpful. Also have your hand up, Sarah, Sharon?
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of found the community by getting onto LinkedIn, because the community is very, and I found you lot, and you were absolutely wonderful, supporting me in my learning journey as I was going through my certificates. I know I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for the community. I think I remember when I was going through learning working through the PL 200, and I was blogging about my experiences with that, and I was finding that what I was working through on the learning pathways, the Microsoft learning pathways, was completely different to what I was experiencing when I was getting hands-on for the first time, because I'd done all my fundamentals without actually having hands-on experience. It was only when I went up to the 200 that I got my own developer site set up. And I would have loved somebody to have told me then, or explained to me the whole cycle, 6-month cycle of how, the exams only get updated every 6 months, and the learning pathways are always about 6 months behind. What you actually do need to be looking at is actually the articles on the docs itself, rather than focusing on what's in the learning pathways. And nobody explained that to me. So there was me blogging away saying, well, it's saying here that I'm learning about the Centre of Excellence, but it's completely different from what I'm actually seeing. And there's this brand new wizard, and I would have loved if there had been somewhere that had actually from like effectively at the front end of Microsoft certificates, advising you about that whole 6-monthly cycle. You do get it now when you renew your exams. So when you actually go in and do your first renewal, they explain it all to you there. But I wish that they'd actually put that, and that was more front and center, so that you could actually understand that, because it would have changed the way I did the 200 completely. Instead of relying on the learning pathway, because it was just so behind.
I had that even so I didn't really understand fundamentals versus associate versus expert, etc. Well, I kind of did, but I went into it because I got a free voucher through Ignite back then. I got a free voucher for PL 400, which is the most difficult exam, in my opinion, out there. And I did it being a baby developer of only 3 months, jumping into the Power Platform. And I studied really, really hard for it, and I got it. But if somebody would have warned me, like, hey, this is not the way to go, I mean, yeah, thank you. But no, it's such a difficult exam. I mean, if somebody would have told me, like, hey, you might want to start with fundamentals and then go from there. And also the way that they explain it on Microsoft Learn versus what the exam actually is. For example, I had like 6 years Power BI experience, and I did the Power BI exam, and I barely scraped through it. And I was like, how? Where are all of these questions coming from? I mean, I kind of get the star, fact, dimension, all sorts of questions, but there were a lot of data aggregation questions that I was not expecting. And I just looked at them like, I've never heard of this in my life. And I've worked with Power BI for 6 years. Like, how? Where are they getting this from? So those are just things that I do think Microsoft has a lot of room to grow. And speaking of that, that's a good leeway into the PL 100 exam that is retiring this year in June. So I actually just did mine this past month. I did PL 100 because I was like, I must have them all. And I did it, and then they announced like, hey, we are retiring it. So I just found an article that Sarah can also share in the chat. It's an article explaining that it will be renamed. What kind of renamed? PL 700, but it's 7001, 7002, 7003. They will be an applied skills type of thing, and they are launching within the next 4 days, I believe, on the 12th. So that's really brand new in that they are changing their approach from PL 100 Power Platform App Maker, sort of like in the introductory after fundamentals, they're changing into applied skills. So I don't really know the direction that they're going into, because I kind of liked the PL 100 exam. but that's also one that I wanted to share with all of you. And the article that's out there right now, it's one single article mentioning it, and there is a GitHub repo that has some of the lab stuff in it, but I haven't seen anything official yet. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I really do recommend for people to start out with fundamentals, then go with the associate exams, and maybe don't start with 400, but and then eventually get like 600 or 500 for Power Automate. But then from there, just actively work within the applications is the best way to learn, because I'm a type of person that it's really difficult for me to think like, to read an article and they are explaining like, hey, if you do a gallery, you can insert this control and it does that. I'm like, okay, but why would I want to have a gallery with an article or with a control in there, and what does it actually do for me? So if you get your own developer tenant, there's a developer.microsoft.com 365 dev program. That's a whole mouthful. But within that, you are able to create your own developer tenant. It's fully free, and it gives you the possibility to actually play around with, for example, things that maybe are disabled within your company, or you may not have Power Apps yet within your company. For example, I've now just done something in my dev tenant that my work tenant won't allow. So I'm just testing functionality there, and it's just really easy to look at all of the options, look in the admin center, look over there without actually messing things up in an actual work environment. But yeah, I mean, as I said, these are things that I really wish somebody would have told me when I first started out, because I broke a whole bunch of things when I first started, including full apps, disabling certain settings, and it ended up being tenant wide, stuff like that. So it's a really good way to get started working within the whole platform.
Even I have one of those environments.
Yeah.
Stuart set up for me. Something that I've heard a lot about is the practice exams as well that are available. I know Craig's mentioned those to me before. To kind of get a feel for the way the questions are worded. I think that's tripped people up on some things they've missed out on before.
Yeah, it's like playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sometimes with the exam questions, because you'll get, like, especially for the multiple choice ones, I've always like deduced like there's always two answers that aren't going to be correct. So okay, that's cool. And then sometimes one is blatantly obvious sometimes if you know your stuff, I guess. But yeah, there might be two that kind of like sound similar. So it's like that process, like, 50-50. Obviously you can't find a friend, but yeah, you can sometimes kind of trim off some of the answers and just narrow it down to two possibles rather than four. That's always a technique that I've deployed with the multiple choice bits of the exams. The case study parts, I think, are a little bit harder when you get onto the 100, 200, 600, because you actually have lots of different areas to go and look in and go backwards and forwards, and you've got to digest a lot of information in a very short space of time to then ask a series of scenario-based questions. And that's, I think they're slightly different. But I think from what I understand, that the weighting of the scores are probably more to the case studies as well anyway. So they're meant to be a bit trickier. But the multiple choice side of things, I think, is, yeah, you can pick out two, get rid of them, and then you're not so bad, hopefully. But I was interested, you mentioned the applied skills, actually. Have many of us on this call actually attempted any of those yet? And what's the general vibe at the moment? Because I think maybe from my perspective, it might be a bit immature, but I don't know if anyone else has had a bit of a play with them yet.
No, they're really fun. But I had real problems with the Azure blob storage one in that this is like really early days, but I did the exam and then just didn't get a score at the end. But I wasn't able, I think you weren't able to reset it for about 3 days, but I didn't actually know what the verdict was. So I didn't know whether I passed or failed. And I also couldn't retake it to then, just go through it again. So yeah, it's they are really fun though. I really recommend the secure storage one. There's that I found that really fun. I just really like the actual doing of it rather than sitting in an exam, because I really don't do well with exam conditions.
Yeah, same.
I mean, I've done 2 out of the 3 so far, and I've seen, as you said, Nathalie, that when they first released them, they just released them as applied skills, and they didn't give them any sort of numbering. And it's only now that they've actually started to number them in like the PL 7000 and 1, 2, and 3. I think it was it Sunil who flagged that to us, that that he spotted that they'd actually started numbering them. And definitely that does seem to be Microsoft's. I can't remember who I was listening to. One of many podcasts that I listened to was talking that I think Microsoft always had the PR100 on their radar a bit, because the 200 covers a lot of the same ground as the 100. So I think on the Power Platform side, the 100 was a good one that they were able to move over. And they did say that they think that this, certainly with things like how do you actually do a model-driven app? How do you provision it? How do you make changes? How do you do flows and all of this? It is really much better to actually show your skill than to actually have a scenario-based question that you've got to actually just answer, which you just think, I would never actually have this scenario in real life. I think I agree with some of the comments that have been put out there, that the model-driven app one was very, very, very basic. I think if and effectively, they give you your learning, their recommended learning pathway beforehand. And if you've done the guided kind of case beforehand, you'll pass the exam, because it's pretty much a one-to-one relationship almost. It's like, okay, I've worked through their guided example in their learning pathway, and now I seem to be doing almost exactly the same. So is it a real test? So I agree with Craig. I think that it is still immature. They may have made it easier than it needs to be, just to get a feel and get people used to it. And they've still definitely got problems with the actual whatever it is that they fire up the virtual environment that they give you. It's
Yeah.
I remember some was it you Paves that laughed at me when I called it like working through a letterbox?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. I mean, I found navigating the lab environment harder than the exam itself, and I think I joked about it on LinkedIn as well.
Same. Yeah, I've tried them twice. Well, I tried the one for Power Automate and the one for creating apps, and I gave up twice because I just couldn't get through the environment, and it was laggy, and it wasn't behaving the way that it could have been, and I got really frustrated, and I was like, okay, never mind then. But no, it's there's definitely room for improvement there, at least in my honest opinion.
I think this is Sunil here. I think, Sharon, I'll just add to your point. The PL 7001, 2, 3 are a bit easier because the environment is not. As of today.
Didn't realize you were on. Lovely to see you. Or not to you.
Maybe they want us to get accustomed with the environment first, and then they will go ahead and shoot us in the head.
I think they need to fix the environment a little bit, make it a little bit more stable, and also more user friendly. But
it also kind of reminds me that when you do a Microsoft exam, it's on this nice 24-inch screen, and there's an 800 by 600 resolution exam in there. I'm like, guys, come on, please fix this. I mean, we're working with Microsoft, the latest technology, and then you're on this like tiny test screen. Yeah, I just hope that they don't take away my MVP status because of this. But no, it's just me being honest about it. But it's.
You can,
I think everybody's saying the same.
Someone put on social media somewhere that F11 still works, so you can still take that tiny little window the size of a fag packet and make it full screen. But you can do F11 on the VM and then F11 on the VM in the VM to make everything kind of full size.
So you take a fag packet size VM and stretch it out to a stretched fag packet VM.
Pretty much, yeah. But at least, yeah, I understand that's one of the frustrations I had trying to work in those small little windows. But yeah, if that's a tip that helps anyone, you can still F11 to make it bigger when you're in the environment. So yeah, fingers crossed that works.
Nathan, you've had your hand up for a while.
Oh yeah. I wanted to just circle back to the exams. I found the PL 100 like freakishly difficult. It was a really hard exam to pass for some reason. Everybody says it's you know they don't give it quite the weight that the 200 and 400 have, but it's a pretty challenging exam. And I guess on the topic of exams, kind of the thing that I find the most difficult is usually they'll give you a number of options and there'll be one or two that you kind of go, it's clearly not that, but then there'll be 2 to 3 options where you're like, I could make a case for doing it any of these ways. And you haven't given me enough information. And it's like the one time in life where overthinking is probably a good thing. And there's like one word in the question that's the difference between, choice A or B. Unless the answer is like Power BI, and then it's like just always choose Power BI. That's the answer to everything.
Yeah, it's what I noticed when I did my 100. It's also the way that you read a question versus how you would respond to it. But in my case, being slightly more experienced within the Power Platform now, I kind of started thinking like, well, it could also happen with option B. I mean, I can make it work in option C, and option D is not bad. So then you really have to start thinking about it. Okay, what would Microsoft think about this? What is their opinion within their product range? Like, how are they intending you to use it? And then I'm like, oh, it's B.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The answer is always Power BI or Power Automate. So.
Yeah, and also sometimes it can be a really sneaky scenario where they have this scenario that fits like 3 different products, and they will have one word like external or customers, and then you'll go, oh, that's Power Pages.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm actually doing my PL 200 tomorrow morning.
Good luck.
Yeah, and
Thank
it's
you.
been in most of the time the cases when we think it's kind of overthinking and we get that wrong.
Yeah. What I do is sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
I was just gonna say there's a surprising amount of Power BI on that exam.
There is, yeah. No, it's, I mean, I had marked like 9 questions marked for review, and then whatever I do, I'm just like, okay, I am not sure about this question, I'll mark it for review, then I'll finish the exam, I will go back to the questions, but almost every single time I'm like, yeah, well, that's still my answer, so that's still it. So I personally try and not overthink the questions, because usually your first answer is the correct one. Yeah, I got 200 in the morning, and it's my last one, my very final Power Platform conference exam.
So I think we have a good news for Nathan now. PL100 is moving out.
Yeah.
Oh, which one is?
PL100.
PL100 is moving out now. We have 3 applied skills.
7,000. Because once you passed it, you
3.
can renew it open book. So it's like, it's pretty easy once you've passed the actual exam.
I found the renewals can be a little bit harder than the initial exam, though. I found that for PL200s. The last 2 years, just been round with Power Pages, which is great if you do stuff for Power Pages, but I don't. So the renewal for PL200 struggle, and PL600 I found pretty savage. I enjoyed the exam. Because even though personally I don't do a lot of Dynamics 365 stuff, I can make logical sense of the questions and theoretically pick an answer based on years of experience. But the renewal was just like, whoa, what's going on here? Just personal experience, and other people get through them absolutely fine. But yeah, I personally found the renewals a lot harder than the initial exam. So yeah, I don't know if that's on purpose. I guess the renewals are more up to date, and the exams perhaps aren't always kept in line with how the technology moves. I think maybe, I don't know, But yeah, the initial set of PL 200 was all right, but yeah, the renewal was a bit of a savage. So if they can retire that one and replace it with applied skills, by the time I come to do my 200 renewal in September, I'd really appreciate that because it make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I did sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
I was just going to say, Nathalie, the initial exams, they are on that cycle, definitely. So they're very much tied to the, whatever's in the learning pathway. Because when I sat, but I think that the renewals still might be as well, because when I sat my PL 200 renewal, it was still talking about PVA. And we, we'd already been over into, Copilot Studio for a while.
Yeah.
And so they do, I think because it's a little bit, I got a bit confused when I renewed my 200 because it was still talking about PVA. And when you went through, it tells you what you're supposed to be, revising and saying what they're going to be testing you on. And they had this whole new module all about consultancy skills for the 200. Didn't get a single question about it, because you could see, like, when you got your question, like, marks at the end and everything, and there was just, they didn't, so they put you through all this saying, right, this is what you've got to learn for your revision, because this is the new stuff that's come out, this is what you're going to test you on, and then they don't even ask you one question about it. And that was a little bit, peeving. And especially then when you find that they're still talking about, stuff which has been rebranded. So I'm not quite sure how that's not working yet.
Yeah, when I did my PL 100, I think I did it in December, and I was actually pleasantly surprised they had changed portals to Power Pages, and I mentioned this to somebody within Microsoft, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know they have changed that already." So I was kind of surprised that it was there, but no, it's in most cases it can take a few more extra months before like within the next six months update cycle or something that it will get changed. But yeah, I mean even sometimes when you look at products like Dataverse, it is still mentioned as common data service or common data something in so many places.
TDS. Yeah. In my case, silly me who forgot the deadline to renew PL 100, but after 2 weeks I got to know that it is getting retired, so no one cares. At least I don't now.
Yeah, no, when I did mine in December, I did find out that it was getting retired, but I was like, oh, it's fine, I will do it anyway, because I found out like a day before I took the exam that it was going to get retired. But I'm like, well, I still want the full set. I mean, I still want all of them, so I'm still going to do it. But it's yeah, we will have to see with other ones. But I know, I mean, also what Craig mentioned with the renewals, for me, PL 400 was the most brutal to renew. So 400 in itself is a really difficult exam if you don't work with extending the Power Platform with plugins, with custom code stuff. I mean, I am by no means a pro coder. So for me, that one was really difficult. But the renewal, first time I did a renewal, it took me 14 attempts, like 2 weeks in a row trying to renew it. Second time, it took me 7 attempts. So it's such a difficult exam. It's yeah.
Did you do it with the Microsoft Docs open?
I did, and still it's a really difficult exam.
Yeah, I failed it the first time.
Yeah,
I
mean,
sorry about that. I only passed. I'm pretty sure I only passed the 400 because it opened me up with the first 7 questions was all code based, and I just thought, oh, that's it. I've got no chance.
Yeah.
But I was extremely lucky that the case study that I did right at the end, which had about 8 questions in it, was all based on model driven apps.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, being a dynamics person, I was able, I had no problem with that whatsoever. But if it hadn't have been for that case study, I doubt that I would have actually got through it, because, that's what saved me, in my opinion. But thanks for the tip on the renewal. I look forward to that.
It is. Well, I mean, it's doable eventually, but it's one of those things. I mean, they really emphasize on the fact that you need to have real life experience with the products if you go towards the associate or expert exams. I mean, it used to be like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would learn an exam dump and you would get the exam and that's it. But now it really requires you to have actual knowledge of how the products work. And also with these renewals, it really strengthens the fact that if you don't know what you're talking about, you won't pass the renewals.
Yeah. They even look different, don't they? Because I was expecting having only just done my first renewal, I was still expecting to have the same environment experience as the exam, but it isn't. The environment experience was like a practice test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that confused me to begin with, because again, nobody told me that, you know, I was expecting. I know you're not going into the same environment because it's not proctored or anything like that. But still, that was completely. Oh, this isn't the kind of questions that I'd been expecting and you know and been preparing for the renewal. They're more like the practice tests questions, which are completely different style of question as well.
Yeah,
or in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a whole lot more low key, just
Yeah.
you practicing kind of, rather than taking an actual exam. And I mean, I kind of like the interface better than the actual exam interface. And I'm really hoping that if Microsoft were to ever listen to this, that they would adapt the exams to be more like the renewals.
Hands-on?
Sorry?
Hands-on? Sort of hands-on?
Well, it's more. I mean, it's a lot more sleek. I think it's in my opinion, it works nicer than having to scroll through different scenarios and having to constantly go back and forth and doing all of the scenarios. I mean, it is of course a different type of question. It's not a scenario-based question, but still, I mean, I just like the look of it.
Right. Now that we are talking about the exams, there's one another thing which is on the licensing specifically. It's not an exam sort of, but it's really good to also explore that area because I have observed only when we as a developer are facing such kind of a requirements or facing such client ask specifically, because not all the clients also would ask what all licenses would be required, because they need in most of the cases the organizations are already equipped with the Dynamics or the Power Platform licenses. But some who are not, they actually put us in that situation, put us on the spot that we need to go back and read through the whole documentation and get our grips on the licensing part. So yeah, that is also another area to explore. Apart from having these exams in our bucket, I would say licensing is another an important one to explore as well.
Yeah,
Do you have the link to that, Nathalie?
I did just find it.
Because
I don't know how
I do remember seeing.
Let me send it through to Sarah.
That would be lovely if Sarah, you could include that.
Because I just looked it up. 1 second. Let me find
it. It does not only contains for Power Platform. It has for on-premise for services as well, for other services of Microsoft. So there is a whole lot of licensing knowledge as well available there. It's really good. I have gone through that 2 times. I had to renew it. So this is good.
Yeah, I'm seeing different ones for Azure licensing, Windows and SQL in Azure, online services, Dynamics 365 apps, Dynamics 365 licensing fundamentals, and Power Platform. So there's a whole bunch of different ones. I mean, so far I've kind of steered clear of it because I don't want to promote myself as a licensing expert. That would open up a whole bunch of other questions. But yeah,
Who is a licensing expert? I don't think even Microsoft know understand their licenses about Power Platform. So yeah, if you could find a licensing expert, can you send them my way? Because I'd like to ask them a few questions. I'm sure we all would.
Yeah.
You see all the smiles and the nods. We all feel the same pain on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right?
I was on a user group session about 3 weeks ago, and somebody created a Copilot Studio bot with the whole licensing PDF attached to it. So I was like, wait a minute, did you just make a Copilot license bot, like an actual Copilot license assistant? I was like, well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I need that in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a plugin I think they have used there. But yeah, I think with the Copilot, not with the Copilot, Copilot generative AI feature, if you put in the documentation of Microsoft, we would be able to get a decent result out of that as well.
Yeah, I'm just going through the Q&A for a second. You asked me the question, Sunil, whether I like the applied skills. I do. I just don't like the interface that it's in right now, and that's my honest opinion. I fully like how it's testing your capability and how you actually maneuver through a Power App and a Power Automate. But for me, I got really frustrated that the lab was lagging and it wasn't really responding the way that I wanted it to. So I gave up after 2 attempts.
Yeah, for some reason, with one of my friend, it is also not working on VPN connection. Not sure why. Haven't found the root cause of that yet, but he's struggling a lot with that.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that I will wait until it gets developed a little bit further before I attempt it again. Somebody asked, is the dev tenant only available for work account, or is creating a personal account on a Power Platform? So for me, it created a whole new account for me, like tenant admin something at Microsoft.com. And I believe I activated it through my personal account. So it's not just through a work account that you have to do it. So you can completely separate it from your work environment and with your own, because the one that I have, I created it last year, and I'm no longer working through that other company, and my dev tenant is still fine. I hope that answers the question.
I think Eamon's dropped off, but I'll let her know that you've answered that question so she can watch it back. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else had any other questions. I mean, I am more than happy to talk about exams for the next 20 minutes. If anybody's curious on one of them, I did most of them for the Power Platform.
Everyone keeps telling me that 400 is the hardest. I've got all the stickers on my laptop for the ones I've done, except for PL 400, which is still here, and I'm not going to put it on my laptop until I pass the exam. But everyone keeps telling me it's so hard. I don't know if I want to. It's like I'm going to need to swap for that, which means I can't do my blogging. So what's more important?
I mean, if you think about it, so I was a baby developer, only just starting in a Power Platform. I studied for it for 3 months and I passed it. So it's not that hard. I mean, if I can do it without being a pro coder, with having no experience with scripting, no experience with Java or all of that stuff, I mean, it is certainly doable, especially for you, Craig.
Yeah.
But it's, it is one that I do try and emphasize, that you don't want to underestimate how difficult or how easy it is. I also try and go into every single exam and don't underestimate exam. For example, I did my fundamentals 2 weeks ago. I've been within the Power Platform now for 3 years. I kind of know everything there is to know around functionality and all of that stuff, but I was still like, I'm still studying for this one. I mean, I don't want to assume that I know all of the fundamental information on the Power Platform. And then when I actually started studying for it, I was like, wait a minute, I did not know that. and I did this train the trainer thing for app in a day 2 weeks ago, and they were explaining some type of power FX thing on one of the controls to show the currency symbol before the number. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know that was a thing. So it's all of these things. So I really try and be open going into exams. Like, don't assume you know everything, and if you do that, then they are certainly doable, and also PL 400.
Yeah, I was definitely not underestimating 400. I just want to know that, do I spend the time studying for it or just write blogs instead? Because I can't do both, but we'll see. But yeah, PL 900 is quite funny because I think like you, I did a bunch of exams and have been working the Power Platform for several years before then I did the fundamentals, and I think I just blitzed my way through that exam in about 11 minutes. I was just like, bang, 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 bang. Whereas other people new to it, it's actually, like you say, you'd recommend going through Microsoft Learn, and it's called fundamentals for a reason, because it does give you the really good fundamental building blocks to then go on to do 100 or applied skills, whatever else. It's a really good place to start for most people, isn't it? Because it's nice and broad across most of the platform, isn't it? Which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's also, as I mentioned, so I was kind of struggling with the fact that I foresaw that there were multiple answers that would work in a certain scenario. They were like, hey, if you have this scenario, is it A, B, C, or D? And I was like, okay, well, B, C, and D could work. I know that you guys, Microsoft, want me to do it with a Canvas app, but I can make that work in a MBA. I can do that within different types of things. So that's the difficult part of doing a fundamentals exam when you're already experienced, because you know of all of the capabilities, and you may select the different answer than what Microsoft is intending it to be.
Yeah, I think that's quite an important tip actually for someone I know who was working his way through the applied skills one, and he got it wrong a couple of times. He didn't meet the pass mark, and he's really getting frustrated. So I said, let me sit with you and walk you through it. And he was doing things that were right, and what we would probably do as consultants or as more experienced developers, but it wasn't the way that Microsoft wanted to get you to do that particular question. So it's like, sometimes the half the trick of the exams, I think, is putting yourself in their eyes of like, how do they want you to do this? Not necessarily the way that you've learned through years of experience might be more efficient or more performant, but it might not actually be the right answer for that question, which is really hard to get your head around when you know there's a better way or different way. So yeah, that's coming quite confusing for people sometimes. I'm not sure maybe I'm alone, but I'm sure other people probably experience very similar that potential frustration of what's right, because there's lots of ways to skin the cat in Microsoft Land, right? Lots of ways to do things. So tough one.
Yeah, in most of the cases also I have seen a couple of members of my zone like have tried going for PL 900, and they were focused on Power Apps only. So that was kind of a hiccup for them because PL 900 asks about Power BI as well. And
I actually did that exam a couple of years ago, just failed. But yeah, there was a surprising amount of Power BI, and I just thought it's Power Apps, Power Automate, and I had no idea what to expect. I've gone through some of the Microsoft Learn and the test exams, but a question I've got, and any of you might be able to answer this, that would help me in my job. When do you trigger the point, Craig, maybe you, when are you going to trigger it to go, right, I'm going to book and take that PL 400 exam? Is it when you've got, done a practice exam and got to a certain point?
Yeah, I think that's actually something I did, was I committed to them because I knew I wouldn't do it. So I just picked a date 3 months in advance and booked the exam and paid for it. Said, right, I'm doing it then, and I'm absolutely going to do it. And then I would make sure I give myself enough time to go through the Microsoft Learn content where I can muck about in my own tenant, build some stuff and get enough learning, and then sit the practice exam millions and millions of times, and then still get anxious about it. But yeah, someone said to me, I think actually it might have been Samuel Smith, during COVID, he was doing some virtual things about how to pass PL 100 and 200. Some of you might have previously heard of him or seen him on LinkedIn. And I think that was one of his recommendations, like, just book it, because you're making that commitment. You've got a deadline and you've got like a goal to aim for. So you can kind of say, right, if I book it in 2 months, I'm going to learn this module in this 2 weeks, this module in this 2 weeks, and then I kind of like lead up to it. So hopefully, you know, life gets in the way. Sometimes you can always move the exams. You can always kind of reschedule a month later if you need to. But yeah, I found that's a good technique mentally to go, right, that's the big hurdle sometimes. I've committed to doing it. I've chosen a day. I'm going to get myself sorted. And then it's a case, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, whether you go to a test centre or do it virtually, because it's slightly different. If you go to a test centre, it's nice and easy. You just sit at a computer and do it. If you do it in your own home, you have to like show where you're in. You've got to take pictures. You've got to move basically your whole office around, and you just got to sit in like an empty space for miles with a laptop and nothing else.
This is
Otherwise,
something I didn't know, and I was flustered. And I'm a crammer, Craig. I could book it. I could book it 3 months ahead, and it'll be the week before that I start actually studying. And then I said to this, she assumed I had a laptop, and it was a desktop. And she said, "Can you lift your laptop?" And I was sweating, and I was like, "This is really stressful."
Yeah, really. And no one tells you that kind of thing. Which is why I was like mention it, because that was me. The first time I did a virtual exam was my PL 100, and that was 2021. And I literally, I was so nervous, flustered, and I started the exam, and then I just didn't do anything for 10 minutes. Even though you're on camera, I thought I just need to calm down. But you're also not allowed to talk to yourself. And I'm huge for talking to myself to problem solve. And the bigger the problem, the more I talk to myself. I've done it for years. So when I'm reading an exam question, I'm talking to myself going, oh, I would do that. And then, oh, no, that's not right. And then someone will pop up on the camera going, stop talking to yourself. It's like, I can't help it. It's how I problem solve. Like, so yeah, there's a few things with the virtual exams. It can be quite a shock to the system if you've never done one before, in terms of rightly so, the level of scrutiny. You've got to make sure you haven't got like post-it notes of answers on your desk. I completely get it. But yeah, if you've never been through one, I'm totally with you, Sarah. It can be very a flustering experience if you're not prepared for it. So
absolutely.
That's another takeaway tip for people potentially.
Vaseline, a pen. I was like, oh gosh, you know.
I smiled.
So kind of a certification day becomes your desk cleanup day as well.
Yeah.
One time during the exam, I smiled on camera, and then they flagged me up thinking I was cheating.
Whom are you are smiling at?
Yeah. They thought I was on my phone because I smiled randomly.
I got told off for swearing, because when I did the PL 600 for the first time, I didn't think I'd pass. So when the score came up, I was like, expletive, get in there. Not realising, obviously, I was still going to go, oi, you shouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah, but I've just finished, and I'm happy that I passed, and then I just my left. But yeah, you can get caught out with that sometimes. I know I did. So yeah.
I forgot I had my earbuds in, because I've always got my earbuds in, and I'm normally listening to music if I'm not actually on a call like this, just to help white noise in my head. And I'd been like prepared everything, taken all the photos, was sitting down in the queue waiting to get set up and everything. And I completely forgot, because I'm so used to just having like music going on in my ears all the time. And then that came on. It's like, have you got earbuds in you? Oh gosh, yes. Sorry. Don't worry. Let me put them away. And then I had to pick my laptop up and show the proctor exactly where I'd actually put the earbuds behind me on like the bookshelf, and it's like, it's not easy to try and actually lift your work laptop up and try and point it so that you can actually showing behind you, and it's like little cubby hole behind me. Yeah, look, they're there, and no, there isn't anything else around.
Especially if you've got it wired up to, I don't know if most of us probably have like those docking stations where you connect multiple things to your dock. I know I have. And I had to disconnect pretty much my whole setup. Take my laptop right out and then charge it with its external dedicated power pack rather than the docking station. I literally had to unwire the whole thing on my first exam. So this is when I was super flustered. And I think I shouted at the bloke, like, are you going to come and put all this back together? Because I was just getting so stressed out. I was just like, why are you making me undo my whole rig? It's taken me ages to put all this together. I was not happy. So yeah, just go and sit at a test centre. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, that's actually a bigger challenge than the exam, I would say.
Yeah,
to
put back
everything in the right
if you
spot.
can survive this interrogation, you're going to pass the exam. Yeah.
And what if sometimes Sometimes it has happened, we have like rip apart everything from the desk, and then still we didn't pass, and then we have to put back everything again. So that's like really double the frustration there.
I think Parvez and Nathan have both got hands up. Be very polite.
Hey, so yeah, this is really useful insight. I mean, I'm only just getting started on my certification journey. I've never actually attempted one of these exams before, so I really appreciate all the insight that's been shared here. One question I had was around the practice assessments that you get at the end of the kind of learn modules. How realistic are they, and how representative are they of the actual exams? Are they this trying to sort of catch you out? Microsoft saying, you think you can get the practice exam? It's not that easy. Is that the case?
I have personally not experienced any of those questions, even the level as well, in the exams.
Yeah,
So
I've kind of what I typically do is I don't say like, hey, learn all of the exam dumps because they have all the answers. But what I do is I look at an exam dump or at test questions and just check the general subject that's in there. And like, okay, I may be getting questions on this particular thing within Power BI, but I don't take those practice exams, like the exam dump type of practice exams. I don't take them as a way to study all of the answers, but I take it more as a guidance. Like, okay, this is what exam is actually about, because Microsoft tells you like you need to be able to describe the process of a model-driven app, but that is so vague. I mean, what are the actual questions? Are they on forms within a model-driven app? Are they on views? Are they on business rules? Are they on business process flows? Like, what is it actually about? So I kind of do that. So just looking at exam dumps for the type of questions that there are, and then study based upon that. And as I said, don't study the exam dumps, but study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not referring to the dumps. I'm referring to the practice assessments you get on Learn. So at the end of the modules,
it's more of a guideline to test whether your overall knowledge is enough, but it's not necessarily that all of those questions will be in the exam, or even that type of subject will be in the exam.
I think measure up's a bit more accurate in it. I don't know that didn't used to be, but measure up's pretty decent, I think, for practice assessments. The one at the end of the MSLM modules I found a bit kind of wishy-washy, like, you can sort of close your eyes, put on your screen, you're probably going to pick the right answers kind of thing. Whereas, measure up. I think if you work for, I think education and some partners have access to something else where you can do assessment tests. I can't remember what it's called.
ESI.
That's the one.
ESI, Craig.
Yeah.
And it's not with ANS is as well, believe it or not.
And it's also on the ESI. If you click on practice test, it just brings you to the practice test from Microsoft. So it's not a special practice test.
It's not. It's no different now. Used to be though, Natalie, didn't it? It used to be different. It used to be that you got on the. I remember when sorry, Nathan, I'm talking over you.
Yeah, no worries.
You sure? I remember when I did my first changeover to the 200, and because that was a huge big step up in comparison to the exam questions you get on the fundamentals. And at that point, what you got on the ESI was closer to the exam than what you got on the practice tests. But I think what Microsoft have done is they've actually uplifted the practice tests, so that the practice tests that you now get, if you click on the exam page, is actually ESI now. So they've actually uplifted what they used to have for the practice test, which was pretty poor. But that means now you don't have a different lot of questions available to you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I find that the measure up exams are the single best way to prep for exams, at least for me. So they're like $100 US, but once you're consistently hitting 90% on it, you're ready for the real thing, with the exception of PL 400. I did fail that the first time. The stuff on Microsoft Learn is probably going to be a little Mickey Mouse for the real exam, because the real exam is generally pretty intense. Yeah, so you definitely like measure up is, for me, it's the way to go. You don't want to use the exam dumps. Microsoft, if they catch you using it, can ban you for life. I don't know how they would catch you using it, but let's just say it's highly, highly frowned upon.
That's all.
So
That's also the reason why I mentioned just you can look at it and see what type of
Yeah.
scenarios they are having within the
Yeah.
exam, but don't fully focus on the exam dumps.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Microsoft pop like questions and answers in there that they use to flag and audit exams. I don't want to find out. So
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, so yeah, I would just steer clear of them.
Yeah, I mean, when I first studied for PL 400, I just looked at all of the articles and videos and anything I could find. I mean, if I were to look at my bookmarks that I had back then, I had over 50 bookmarks of articles and videos on the subjects that PL 400 had. And it was just brutal studying for that one. It was not fun.
It's a hard exam.
I think exams should be one question. Are you good at Google? That's all you need. All right. Got a business problem, Google it. You'll probably get the answer. There you go.
Are the exams not open book now?
They are
They've
now.
not
but
done one,
no,
Some of them.
not 100%.
Yeah.
You're allowed to look at the docs, but there's certain things you are allowed to look at and certain things you're not allowed to look at.
Yeah, when I did my fundamentals, it had a Microsoft Learn in it, but when I did my 100 associate, it didn't have Learn in it. So it also really depends. And the Learn docs that are in there that you're able to search through don't have the exact answers that's in the exam. So it's kind of more a guide towards something. For example, there was a question on versioning, on whether a version when you upgrade it goes from 1.0 to 1.1 or 1.0.1, and that exact answer is not in the docs. So it's still, I mean, it's a guide, but it doesn't really give you the answer.
I always hate the questions where they're like, what are the steps to do, this, that, or the other.
Put them in the
It's
right
like,
order.
Oh yeah.
Like the software's
terrible.
literally going to guide you through it. So, memorizing it isn't
Yeah,
really helping anyone.
and it's also if you were to have like steps 1, 3, 5 in that order, and you are missing step 2, then steps 3 and 5 will automatically be wrong because you're missing a step in between, and it just those questions are not nice.
And on a project, the client's never going to be like, true or false, A, B, C, or D. Does the solution meet the goal? They're never going to ask you that in the real world. So
that would make for an interesting discovery, though, wouldn't it?
I don't know. It would ruin what we do all day as consultants, which is answer every question with, well, it depends.
Yeah.
Solve their problem, you'll bill them for a day. Respond, it depends, and you bill them for life.
I'm just keeping an eye on the time. It's we've had an hour. I don't know if anyone's got anything that they kind of want to finish off the session with.
I think I've gone through everything
here. Yeah, that was really
interesting. Any pro tips from Nathalie?
Go for it with studying for exams. Try and get them. I mean, even if they sound daunting, like PL 400, I mean, it really does help and show other people that you have the skill set. So, for example, I can tell people that I'm an expert in Power Automate, but if I have the Power Automate exam, that also emphasizes it and helps within your consultancy or getting traction with clients. So, I would say to go for it. I mean, #alwayslearning. It's one that I use all of the time. So yeah, that's the biggest tip I can give. Just go for it and have fun.
Yeah, I second that.
Awesome! What a lovely round table. This has been a learning curve for me for sure. But yeah, really cool. Thank you, and thanks for everyone for coming. Your lovely cameras on. Loads more booked in. There'll be a schedule coming out for next Friday, but for this session it'll be recorded, so I can share that with the group that have been on today. And I think it'll be really a really useful resource for anybody looking, you know, like Parvez trying to start their journey on exams. So thank you, everybody, especially Nathalie, obviously.
Of course, you're very welcome.
Yeah, okay, great to see you all, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
lovely.
Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Nice.